own statement, opening statement. Drugs are involved here, the sale, purchase, non-payment, etc. has kind of been the theme here. You want to be heard further? I'll allow it.
And Judge, just so, I don't normally do this, but I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. That when I ask, and when Mr. Vorpagel comes in, I'd like a few minutes with him to go through some of this quickly. Again, I've already briefed him on almost everything. When I asked Vorpagel, how do you know Chris Vasata? It's, the real story is because they would deal drugs back and forth and guns back and forth, as well as, so that's subsection A I want to talk about, and then B, that the reason Vasata came over the night and the day before was because Vasata was interested in buying guns from Charlie, and he asked him, what do you got over here? And Charlie went and showed him all the firearms he had in the house, or some of the firearms he had in the house. But it's the state's contention that was a ruse. That was Vasata's way to find out what they were going to be up against when they came back.
Or perhaps what he wanted to steal.
Or steal it. So we believe that that's relevant. We don't need to go into, their entire past together, but I think a general statement, we knew each other because we should go do drugs back and forth, sell, and firearms, and he came over the night before.
Ms. Ramsey.
Of the gun exchanges, and as to Mr. Vasata being there Saturday night, I mean, if that's the state, if they're going to present that, I can tell you that there is direct contradictory evidence in Mr. Vorpagel's phone records.
I didn't hear her last statement.
There is direct contradictory evidence to that.
Well, that's for
All right.
examination.
I think it's relevant, and I'll allow you. It's your choice,
Okay.
state. And you want him brought in, you want to talk to him right here?
I
Or
do.
you're going in the back? So you want him in?
Sure, yes.
Okay. Let's bring in Mr. Vorpagel from...
Okay, actually, I can go right back there.
All right. Dunk, you take care of that. Just let's wait for him to get seated, but he should be right there. We're going to call him right in as soon as I get the jury seated. All right, everybody have a seat. Make yourselves comfortable. Good morning, jurors. Welcome back. Hopefully you all had a nice recharging weekend. Not the best weather. And guys, so we got a little out of order on seats. Just make sure you have your right pad, and we'll get don't worry about it. We know you by now, so it doesn't matter where you're sitting. We'll work it out later. But everybody make sure you have all your own pads. And if you start to run short on paper, just let Deputy Dunkley know. How many of you in this group, that was the first time you met Deputy Dunkley? That's the first time, because we had so many groups of people. Deputy Dunkley decided it was a good time to go to Barbados, which is where my grandmother's from. And we missed you, John. And he's been with me for a very, very, very long time. We're like brothers. And so we're glad to have you back. But if you need anything, just let him know. He will accommodate you any way he can. He's the best. So with that being said, thanks for your patience this morning. I think we have a request already. You need some paper. Ms. Swager needs a new pad. We'll get you one. And any issues, anything I need to know about right now? Then great. We'll get started. And we'll get you a new pad. And State, call your next witness.
State calls Charles Vorpagel.
Let me have Charles Vorpagel, please. Mr. Vorpagel, follow Deputy Dunkley right there. We're going to put you up in the witness box. Don't open up that microphone. Make sure it's close to his mouth. Mr. Vorpagel, once you get into to the best of your ability, raise your right hand and face Mr. Clerk for me.
Please solemnly swear or affirm that you are about to give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes, I do.
All right, you're going to have a seat right there, sir. Once you get yourself situated, Deputy Dunkley's going to help you out with that microphone, and please, please, please speak directly into the center of it. And then, if you do me a favor, state your full name for the record and spell your last name slowly for the jurors.
My name is Charles Louis Vorpagel. My last name is spelled Vorpagel.
All right. State, you may proceed.
Good morning, how are you?
I'm good.
You've introduced yourself to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury, and you're in custody, is that correct?
Yes.
Are you in state custody or federal custody?
I'm in federal custody.
Now tell us what sentence you're serving and for what?
I'm serving an 8-year sentence in federal prison for trafficking with a firearm and felon in possession of firearm.
Are those charges, did they arise from what was found in your home the night of this homicides?
Yes, they did.
Okay. Did you plead guilty to those crimes?
Yes, I did.
And approximately when was it that you were charged and when did you plead guilty? Do you recall?
I believe I was charged February 9th,
Of what year?
2017,
Okay.
and I pled guilty in November.
Of 2017?
Yes.
Okay. And you pled guilty because you were guilty?
Yes.
And when I say you were you guilty of having all those firearms in your home as well as having drugs?
Yes.
Did you bypass or forego having a trial?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know Chris Vasata?
Yes, I do.
Do you see him here in court today?
Yes, I do.
Please point to him and describe what he's wearing.
He's wearing a tie and a suit and glasses.
Is he sitting over at council table with 4 other attorneys?
Yes, he is.
There's 2 guys in a tie and a suit and glasses. Is he the one with or without facial hair?
Without facial hair.
The record could reflect he's identified Chris Vasata.
Noted.
How long, prior to February 5th, 2017, how long did you know Chris Vasata?
About 5 or 6 years.
Did y'all go to the same high school?
I do not know.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Jupiter, Florida.
Were you born there?
Yes.
What high school did you go to?
I went to Jupiter High School.
And your parents, did they, when you were growing up, were they divorced?
Yes, they were.
What occupation did your father have?
My father was a licensed trapper.
What's that mean?
He caught animals in people's yards for a living.
Did your father, growing up, did he have a lot of firearms?
Yes, he did.
Did he teach you about firearms growing up?
Yes, my father taught me gun safety at a very young age.
Were there always, when you're in your dad's home and you growing up, were there always firearms around you?
Yes.
Now, did you finish graduating from high school or did you get your GED?
I withdrew in 11th grade and got my GED.
When was it that you began to become involved in drugs?
Just after high school.
And how did it start?
It started with marijuana and progressed over the years.
When you say it started with marijuana, did you just start smoking it or did you immediately start selling it?
I first started smoking it in high school.
Okay. And then did that lead to other drugs?
Yes.
When So how old were you when you got your GED?
I was 17.
Can you read and write, Mr. Vorpagel?
Yes.
From the age of 17 on, about how old were you when you kind of started dealing drugs?
My early 20s.
And give us a little bit of an idea as to what parts of Palm Beach County and/or Jupiter you lived in back then.
I lived in Jupiter and in Palm Beach Gardens.
How old are you right now?
I'm 29 years old.
So how old were you back in February of 2017?
I was 27.
27 years of age at the time of these homicides. How long had you been dealing drugs prior to that?
About 6 years.
Did you ever have any other jobs, any legitimate jobs?
Yes, I did.
And what kind of things were you doing?
I've worked in a few restaurants, and I also worked for my stepfather for some time doing auto upholstery.
Doing what?
Auto upholstery.
Okay. And when you say your stepfather, is that your mom's husband?
Yes.
If you can pull that microphone up to you. I see you keep, maybe one of the deputies can help you. You keep kind of leaning forward, so I want you to, pull that up close to you. Now, you said you were 27 years old at the time of these homicides. You'd been dealing drugs for about 6 years. How long had you known Vasata at the time of the homicide?
I had known him about 5 or 6 years.
And in knowing Chris Vasata those 5 or 6 years, were you all both involved in selling drugs?
Yes.
He was as well?
Yes.
Is that how you became to know him?
Yes.
Let's talk a bit about some of the other people that were there that night of the homicide that are now dead. Sean Henry. Tell us how long you knew Sean and what was your relationship with him?
I knew Sean for a long time throughout high school. He was a very good friend of mine. We were very close.
When you and Sean were younger, were y'all in Boy Scouts together?
Yes.
So did you know him before high school?
Briefly. Only through Boy Scouts.
All right. Did you ever go to church with Sean?
I went to a few church functions with him.
Was Sean active in the church?
He was.
And prior to February of 2017, you said you and Sean were really close. How long had you and Sean been like best friends prior to that homicide?
About 4 years.
And was Sean also involved in the drug trade?
Yes.
How about Brandy El Salhi? How long had you known Brandy?
About 9 or 10 years.
And when was it that you first knew Brandy?
When I was 19, she was still in high school. She was dating a friend of mine.
Had you and Brandy kept in touch?
Yes.
Did Brandy go away to college?
Yes, she did.
Where'd she go?
She went to Gainesville, I believe.
University of Florida?
Yes.
During the time she was at University of Florida, would she come home for breaks and holidays?
Yes.
Would you see her then?
Yes.
Back in February of 2017, was Brandy home working in a law firm when you all were together that weekend?
I believe so.
How about Kelly Doherty? Did you know Kelly at all?
No, I had met Kelly a few days before the incident.
All right. When you say the incident, you mean 2 days before the homicides?
Yes.
So did you know Kelly from high school? Did you know her well at all?
No.
How is it that Kelly ended up there that evening? Who did she come with?
She came over with Brandy.
Let's talk about, do you know a guy named Luke Kasukos?
Yes, I do.
And how long had you known Luke?
A few years, 4 years maybe.
And how is it that you knew Luke? Was he also involved in the drug trade in Jupiter?
Yes, I believe so.
Selling drugs, buying drugs?
Yes.
Same with Chris Vasata?
Yes.
How about a guy named Marcus Stewart? Did you ever know Marcus Stewart?
No.
Tell me about Sean Henry. Did Sean know Chris Vasata?
Yes, he did.
Did he know him from the same way that you knew him?
I believe so.
When you say, I believe so, if the answer is yes, and you can be definitive, go ahead and tell us yes. Sometimes people use I believe so as a slang, okay? So
Yes.
if you're sure about something, tell us. If you're not sure about something, you can say I think so or I believe so, all right? Do you know if Sean knew Luke Kasukos?
Yes.
And did he know him?
Yes, he did.
So did you and Sean know, both you and Sean knew Chris Vasata and Luke, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
What was the relationship? Let me rephrase that. Back on February 5th and before that, in your mind, what was the relationship between Chris Vasata and Luke Kasukos?
They were friends.
Did you know they were good friends?
I believe them to be good friends, yes.
Did there come a time when you and Sean and/or Sean began to have some issues with Luke?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Sean and I believe that Luke had robbed another friend of ours' house.
All right. And when about was that in terms of, let's use the homicides as a benchmark time? How soon prior to the homicides did you guys begin to kind of put that together?
About 2 weeks.
And as a result of that knowledge that you all believed, what, if anything, did Sean and/or yourself do or say?
I don't understand.
Okay. You told us that you and Sean both believed that Luke had robbed a friend of yours, correct?
Yes.
What feelings did that bring up in you yourself?
Anger.
And what about Sean?
He was angry too.
Did you all communicate with Chris Vasata? Did you talk to Chris Vasata about this belief that you had that Luke had robbed someone?
Yes.
Tell us about that. When did it happen, and what'd you say?
The night before the shooting at my house, Chris Vasata came over, and him and Sean had a discussion about Luke robbing his friend's house and how to get to Luke and get back at him for what he did.
Okay. Let me take you step by step then. The night before the homicides, the day and the night before the homicides, did you see Chris Vasata?
Yes, I did.
And where did you see Chris Vasata?
He was at my house.
What was he doing over at your house?
He came by my house the night before to look at a couple of firearms that he wanted to buy.
We talked a bit about how you were dealing drugs and that Chris Vasata was dealing drugs. Were you also dealing in firearms, selling and buying firearms from people?
Yes, I was.
Was Chris Vasata doing the same thing?
Yes, he was.
That evening, when Chris Vasata came over, the evening before the homicide, did Chris Vasata come to your house and inquire about buying firearms?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes, he did.
All right. So walk us through that evening then.
Chris had called me Saturday evening. He asked if he could come by. I said yes. He came over. I assumed he was by himself. He came inside. I took him to one room in my house where all the guns and ammunition were stored. And I showed him 2 different assault rifles.
Okay.
And I
Is
told-
that what he was interested in?
Yes.
When you say you took him to your gun room, were there a lot of guns in there?
Yes.
And what was Chris doing? Was he looking around?
He was looking around.
Did he buy any of the guns?
No, he did not.
Did he ask you about any of the guns?
Yes, he did.
Which ones was he asking you about?
He asked me. He asked me about a Keltec PLR that I had. He also asked me about an AR-15 that I had.
All right, are those both assault rifles?
Yes, they are.
How long do you think you guys stayed in that room?
A couple of minutes, 4, maybe 5 minutes.
Then what happened?
Then we went back into my living room, and at that time, Sean had called him into the back room of my house to have a private conversation.
Okay. Were you privy to that conversation?
I
In
wasn't.
other words, did you overhear it?
No.
Did you know what they were talking about, though?
I had assumed what they were talking about.
Prior to that night, had you and Sean been kind of inquiring about people in the community as to where Luke lived?
Yes.
How many people do you think you asked that question of?
2, maybe 3 people.
And why? Why were y'all asking where Luke lived?
We wanted to find out where he lived because we wanted to confront him about the robbery.
Was Luke someone like Chris who would come over to your house on a regular basis?
No.
Had Luke ever been over to your house on Mohawk?
No.
And just for clarification purposes, when I'm asking you about Chris Vasata coming over to your house the night before the homicide in the gun room, was that at the Mohawk address?
Yes, it was.
Who did you live there with?
Myself.
All right. Did you have drugs in the house?
Yes, I did.
Did you have drugs in the house the night of the homicide?
Yes, I did.
And you had guns in there, correct?
Yes.
So how long did Sean and Chris stay in that room and talk?
I think it was about 10 minutes.
Okay. And then what happened when they came out?
Chris left my house.
How many times had Chris been over to your house prior to that on Mohawk?
I couldn't say an exact number, but a handful.
Okay. When you say a handful, does that mean 5? Is 5 a handful?
5 is a handful.
And how long had you lived there?
I had rented the home in September of 2016.
So September, October, November, December, January, February, less than 6 months?
Yes.
When Chris Vasata would come over to your house on Mohawk those handful of times, what kind of car was he driving?
It was usually a BMW.
What color?
It was a darker color. I couldn't be sure of the exact color.
We've seen photographs of your home on Mohawk. Is there a driveway in your home?
Yes.
When Chris Vasata came over that handful of times, including the night before the homicides, where would he park?
He would park in my driveway.
Did you ever know Chris Vasata to park in a neighboring neighborhood like Paseos and then walk almost a mile to your house?
No.
He would always park in your driveway?
Yes.
What kind of car did Sean Henry drive?
A Honda Accord,
And what color was that?
blue.
When Sean would come over to your house, where would he park?
In the driveway.
Was Sean's car there pretty often at your house?
Yes.
The night prior to these homicides, was Sean's car parked in the driveway?
Yes.
What about a red truck? Do you own that truck? Whose truck is that?
That truck belongs to a friend of mine named Woody.
How long had that truck been parked there?
A long time. He stored it there.
So the night before the homicide, when Vasata came over, was that red truck there?
Yes.
Was Sean's car there, the Honda?
Yes.
Any other car there?
No.
Now, the night before the homicide, when Chris Vasata had come over to speak with you all, or to look at some guns, had you all spoke with Chris Vasata before that night about Luke?
Yes.
When?
I had mentioned to Chris on numerous occasions that I was looking for Luke's address.
Did Chris ever give you Luke's address?
No.
Did he ask, why are you looking for him?
Yes.
And what'd you tell him?
I told him that he owed a lot of friends money and that we believe he robbed another friend's house.
Okay. Did he say anything, like he'll pass the message along or leave Luke alone, anything?
No.
But did he ever give you any information about Luke, where he could be found?
He never gave me an exact address, just guesses where he might live.
Did any of those guesses materialize?
No.
Did you know how close Luke and Chris Vasata really were?
No.
Did you think Vasata was a friend of yours?
Yes.
Now, you told us about the night before when Vasata came over. Was there anyone else in the house besides you, Chris, and Sean?
No.
What night was that, a Saturday night?
Yes.
Was the Super Bowl a Sunday?
Yes, the Super Bowl was on Sunday.
The next day?
Yes.
Tell us then about that day, and tell us everything you can remember from the morning until the shootings occurred. What were you doing? Who were you hanging out with?
I woke up at my house late in the morning, I think around 10 or 11. I did some things around the house with Sean. We left my house, I think, around 1 or 2 in the afternoon.
Uh-huh.
We went to Kirby's, a restaurant in Juneau.
And let me stop you right there. Had you been in touch with Brandy
Yes.
at that point? And what were the plans with Brandy and Kelly, if any, that day?
We were supposed to meet them for lunch.
Right. Where?
They wanted to go to Thirsty Turtle, but on the way there, Sean and I decided we wanted to go to the other bar, and we went there instead.
Okay. And you went to Kirby's?
Yes.
Did you and Sean, were you drinking that day?
Yes.
Let me ask you a little bit about your alcohol and drug consumption around that time period, 2006, 2017, 2016. Did you regularly smoke pot?
Yes.
And when I say regularly, how often?
Every day.
If you smoked pot every day, did you find that you needed more and more to get high?
Yes.
Did you build up a tolerance to it?
Yes.
And how about alcohol? Were you drinking a lot?
Yes.
Same question. Did it take you more and more alcohol to drink to feel effects?
Over time, yes.
And other drugs. Were you guys doing cocaine occasionally?
Yes.
Ecstasy?
Yes.
Let's go back to that day then. So you and Sean go to Kirby's. What is that, a bar, restaurant?
It's a bar and restaurant.
Where's that at?
It's in Juneau on the corner of A1A and Donald Ross.
Is that when you and Sean
US
start, I'm sorry.
US 1 and Donald Ross.
Is that when you and Sean started drinking, or had you started drinking before that?
That's when we started drinking.
And tell us more. How long did you stay there? What were y'all doing?
We were playing pool and drinking. We ordered some lunch. I think we left there about 4 p.m.
Did you eat?
Yes.
When you left, were you drunk?
Yes.
When I say drunk, were you falling down drunk?
No.
How drunk is drunk?
I'd had about 4 drinks.
Okay. Could you still speak?
Yes.
Do you remember that day?
Yes.
Where did y'all go after that?
After that, Sean and I went back to my house.
And what time was that?
I believe it was around 5 o'clock.
Were you in communication with Brandy and Kelly that day?
Yes.
What was the plan to be? You were supposed to meet them for lunch. Y'all decided to go somewhere else. Were there further plans with Brandy and Kelly?
Yes.
What was that?
We were supposed to meet up later that night.
Okay, and what do you mean by that?
We were either going to go out together or they were going to come over to my house.
Okay, and when you say we, do you mean you and Sean?
Yes.
Do you have any plans with Chris Vasata that day?
No.
Had you made any plans with Chris Vasata that Saturday night regarding Sunday?
No.
Other than Sean, Brandy, and her friend Kelly, did you make any plans with anyone else on Super Bowl Sunday?
I had plans with my friend John
John who?
John Veneziale.
And what plan was that?
He had Ubered to my house during the night and decided he didn't want to stay.
All right, we'll get to that. That's later in the day, right?
Yes.
Okay. So you said, and correct me if I'm wrong, you and Sean left Kirby's, and then where'd you go?
We went back to my house.
You said 4 or 5?
Yes.
What'd you and Sean do then?
I had some business to handle with drugs. So
What does that mean?
I had to wait for someone to come by to drop drugs off. And I also had to bag up drugs and weigh things out for the night.
Okay. The person that came over to buy the drugs, was it Chris Vasata?
No.
Was it Luke?
No.
Was it anybody involved or relevant to this case?
No.
How long did they stay?
About 10 minutes.
And then you said you had to bag up drugs for the evening? What does that mean?
Just like any other job, I had work to do that night involving the drugs. I had to make sure it was done before I continued on enjoying my evening.
All right. Did you have any other drug deals planned that night?
No.
Any firearms deals planned?
No.
So now what time are we at?
About 8 o'clock?
8 p.m., Super Bowl night?
Yes.
And tell us more about that friend that came over. What was his name?
His name was John Veneziale.
Tell us about John.
John called me and wanted to hang out. I told him he could come over. When he got to my house, I had told him that Brandy and Kelly were also supposed to be coming by. At the time, him and Brandy were in a fight,
Okay.
and he decided that he didn't want to stay. So I took him to another friend's house.
Okay. When you say him and Brandy were in a fight, were they just not getting along that night?
Yes, they had gotten into an argument the previous weekend.
Okay. So how long did John stay at your house?
About an hour and a half.
And then how did he leave? You said you drove him somewhere?
Yes, I took Sean's car and drove him to a friend's house in Sheltrace.
Where's Sheltrace?
It's in Jupiter, off Central Boulevard.
And so what time is that then?
I want to say that was around 9:30 or 10 o'clock.
Okay. Well, what time does Super Bowl start?
I don't know.
Tell me about that. It's Super Bowl Sunday, right?
Yes.
Had you had any plans to watch the game?
No.
Why not?
I don't care much for sports. I don't watch football.
Okay.
And I didn't have cable at my house.
Did you have Wi-Fi at your house?
I did.
Did you watch TV a lot?
I watched a lot of Netflix.
Right. On your TV or on your iPad or iPhone?
My TV.
I'm sorry?
On my TV.
But did you have any interest in watching the Super Bowl that evening?
No.
How about the girls? How about Brandy and Kelly? Did they want to watch the game?
I don't believe they did.
So now what time is it about, you said?
I got back from dropping off John about 10:15.
Where was Sean during this time?
He stayed at my house.
So when you and John left, who was the only person at your house?
Sean.
As you were leaving to drop John off and then coming back to drop John off, did you see any strange cars around your house?
No, I did not.
Did you see Vasata in that black BMW he would drive?
No, I did not.
So did you go straight home after you dropped John off?
Yes.
And tell us what happened. When you pulled in, what occurred?
As I pulled in the driveway, Brandy and Kelly had also pulled in at the same time.
Okay.
We all got out of the car. They had brought beer and cigarettes, and we went inside.
All right. So you think this was around 10:15 or so?
Yes,
Is that the first time that Brandy and Kelly had been to your house that day?
they were there early Sunday morning around 6 a.m. I was still sleeping though. I told them I would meet them later.
So that evening, though, is that the first time Kelly and Brandy came over?
Yes,
And you said y'all pulled in about the same time?
yes.
What was Brandy driving?
Brandy was driving her black Nissan.
And where'd she park?
She parked right next to Sean's car.
So at that point, how many cars were in your driveway?
Sean's Honda, Brandy's car, and my friend's truck.
Was Brandy over at your house the night before when Chris Vasata came over?
She was not at my house while Chris was there.
Was her car there when Chris was there the night before?
No.
The night before when Chris Vasata came over, what two cars were in the driveway?
Sean's car and my friend's truck.
Right, that red truck?
Yes.
Right. So you said you pulled up around the same at the same time Brandy and Kelly did. Tell us what you all did at this point.
We went inside. We set the beer down, put some beers in the fridge. We made some drinks. We snorted a few lines of Coke. Started smoking a joint. And then we went out back to sit by the fire.
Okay. So when you say we, is that you, Sean, Brandy, and Kelly?
Yes.
Did you and Brandy do ecstasy?
Yes.
When did you take it?
Friday and Sunday.
Okay, what time Sunday?
I believe we had taken it right when we got there.
What do you mean right when you got there? Right when you got where?
When we got back to my house.
Okay. Meaning 10:30 or 10:15 when the girls pulled up and you pulled in?
Yes.
So you went inside, did some drugs, right? And then, so how long did you stay inside your home?
I believe we were inside for about 10 minutes.
And then what did you do?
We went outside to sit by the fire.
When you all went to sit outside by the fire, was it all four of you?
Yes.
Was there anyone else there?
No.
Were there any plans for anyone else to be there?
No.
When you all walked out of the house to go sit by the fire, did you have any firearms with you?
No.
Did you take any of the firearms and take them outside of your home?
No.
Did you know if Sean had a firearm or a handgun
Yes.
in his back?
Yes.
You did know
Sean
that?
had a revolver on him.
I'm sorry?
Sean had a revolver on him.
Did he ever take it out that you saw that evening?
No.
Did you see the girls with any firearms?
No.
What was the mood?
We were all relaxing, having fun, ready to enjoy the evening.
All right. Now, you've told us you were drinking earlier that day. You had just done some lines of Coke, right?
Yes.
Just took an ecstasy. Did you start smoking a joint or rolling a joint?
Yes, we had been smoking all evening.
All right. So how are your faculties?
My faculties?
Meaning, are you able to walk and talk and understand what's happening?
Yes.
Was this an odd occurrence of yours that you would do these drugs and drink, or was this kind of like your daily routine?
I use drugs regularly.
Did you build up a tolerance for all of that?
Yes.
Do you remember that evening?
Yes, I do.
I'd like to show you a few photographs. First of all, I'll show you what we have marked as stage 328 for ID purposes. A firearm was found in your backyard that night after the shooting. Is this your firearm?
No, it is not.
State moves 328 into evidence at this time.
Any objection?
No.
Admitted.
It's a Glock. Did you own this firearm?
No, I did not.
You have a lot of firearms, but was this one yours?
No.
And I'll show you what's marked as 327. Do you remember what shoes you were wearing?
I was wearing flip-flops.
Do you recognize that shoe as being the one you were wearing?
Yes.
State moves 327 into evidence.
Any objection? Admitted.
Do you remember how many chairs were around that fire pit?
I believe there were 4 or 5 chairs.
4 to 5 chairs?
Yes.
And I'm going to use states, what's been moved into evidence as states number 1. And I'm going to ask you to take a look at this. It's just an aerial photograph, not from that evening or day, but an aerial photograph of your house. Do you recognize that as being your home?
Yes.
Do you see the area where the fire pit would be?
Yes.
I'd like you to take this pen and number. Use yourself as number 1. Tell us where you were sitting. Can you write? Judge, is it okay if they, so he can write?
Yes.
What number is that? It's number 1. Is that easier for you? Okay, so put a number 1 where you were sitting and do it from this angle. There's no chairs on that photograph, but I'd like you to put number 1 approximately where you were sitting. Put and do a circle where the fire pit is, the actual fire. Okay? And then number 2, where was Sean? And put a number 3 for where Kelly was. And a number 4 where Brandy was. However you want to turn it around is fine. Where was Sean? Okay, so Sean is 3, Brandy is 4, you're number 1, and Kelly is 2, correct? Is that right? You're number 1. Kelly will be number 2. I'm sorry, I think I messed you up. I did mess you up. Number 3 would be Sean, and number 4 is Brandy. Right? Okay, thank you, that was my fault. Permission to publish at this time?
Brandon.
Mr. Vorpagel, is there a,
Yes.
You listed number 1. Is this where you were sitting?
Yes.
Number 2, is that where Kelly was sitting?
Yes.
Number 3, is that where Sean was sitting?
Yes.
And number 4, where Brandy was?
Yes.
And how were y'all sitting? Were there chairs there?
There were chairs around the fire.
If you could, we're going to use this as a reference point. This aerial photograph, is this and does this, even though it's not from the night of or the day of, does this fairly accurately depict the layout of your home and your yard?
Yes.
What is this copper thing right here?
It is a brown tarp.
Is that like a carport?
Yes.
Is this your driveway?
Yes.
And back over here, what's back here?
It is a canal.
And is there a fence around your yard?
Yes.
If someone were to come into your home or to come into your backyard, can you, using this laser pointer, kind of show us the different ways they could get there?
There's a gate right here. One side of the gate was missing, so it was always open.
Okay. So they could walk straight through?
Yes.
Did you have, though, a light that would automatically turn on if somebody walked past it?
There was a floodlight on the corner of my house right here.
That evening, was the floodlight on or off?
I believe it was on.
Was it dark back there, though?
Yes.
What's another way someone could get into your yard?
There's a dock to the channel right here and a walkway into my backyard.
So even though your yard was fenced, is there kind of an opening where someone could come in?
Yes.
Right. Now, when I asked you when you pulled up, if you saw any cars there, right? Did you see any people other than Kelly and Brandy and Sean in your house or around your house?
No.
How long were you all sitting out there before something happened?
A few minutes.
Okay, sometimes people say a few minutes and it's an hour. Sometimes people say a few minutes and it's 30 seconds. What's your best estimate of how long you were sitting out there?
When I sat down, I lit a cigarette and I never got to finish it.
Okay. Was Kelly smoking as well?
Yes.
Was everybody smoking a cigarette?
Yes, we were all smoking.
All 4 of you?
Yes.
Tell us what you remember next. Well, first of all, let me back up just a little bit. During that few minutes when y'all are back there, from the time you sit down to before the shooting started, what was the mood? What were you doing?
We were laughing, telling jokes.
Did you have any loud music going?
No.
Were you having a party back there?
No.
Were you expecting a bunch of people to come over?
No, it was a private gathering.
Just the 4 of y'all, correct?
Yes.
Tell us then, after a few minutes, what happened.
After about 3 to 4 minutes from this part of my yard,
And you're pointing, and we have to say it for the record. So tell me where you're pointing at. Describe what area of your yard you saw something.
the far corner of my backyard.
All right, so if I'm looking at your house, and then we're at the fire pit, is it to the left or to the right you saw people or you heard something?
I heard and saw shots starting from the left side of this walkway.
Okay, and you're pointing to the walkway that comes by your pool?
Yes, this walkway goes from my pool down to the dock.
And tell us what you saw and tell us what you heard.
I heard what sounded like a chain of firecrackers going off, and I looked up and saw several gun flashes coming from this part of my yard and quickly moving across to this area.
And you told us that you grew up with guns. We obviously know you're familiar with guns as a young adult. Have you had the occasion to see what's referred to as muzzle flash?
Yes.
That if somebody at nighttime is shooting a firearm, what do you see?
You see a bright flash in front of the barrel.
How many of those muzzle flashes did you see?
I saw at least 7 or 8 before I had fallen out of my chair and ran.
Okay. When you say you saw 7 or 8, does that mean there were 7 or 8 different guns?
No, that means that the shots were being repeated very rapidly.
Did you see different muzzle flashes from different firearms?
I saw 2 distinct differences in the size of the muzzle flash.
All right. And what does that mean?
That means that one of the flashes was much larger than the other.
Okay. And when you're firing an assault rifle, is the muzzle flash larger?
Yes,
You said you saw 7 or 8 muzzle flashes. Did you hear gunshots?
yes, it sounded like firecrackers.
Okay. How close were these gunshots getting to you all?
They were within 10 to 15 feet from us.
All right. So go ahead and then tell us. You saw this. First of all, do you know how many people were there?
I believe I saw 3 figures.
What were they wearing, if you saw?
From what I saw, they were all wearing very dark clothes and their faces were covered.
All right. So are you able to identify any of the shooters by face?
No,
Have you ever been able to identify any of the shooters by face?
no.
Okay. Go ahead then and tell us what you did, what you saw.
When the shooting started, I fell backwards out of my chair. I saw 3 figures rapidly approaching from this direction, firing guns at the same time. And I fell backwards out of my chair from right here and turned and ran through this alley on the side of my house.
Okay.
First, jumping over this AC unit, I landed in a pile of brush that was stored on the side of my yard. I took several more steps and leaped over the fence. You can't see it, but it's right here. It divides my front and backyard. I landed on the other side, and I continued hearing shots, and I jumped through. There's a wall of bushes right here separating my neighbor's front porch from my yard. I jumped through the bushes. I landed on my neighbor's porch, and I got up and yanked his door open and told him to call 911 that someone is shooting people in my yard.
All right. Let me take you back just to the backyard again for one moment. Showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 24. You recognize that's already been admitted in evidence. It's 24. Do you recognize that's being in your yard?
Yes.
In terms of location-wise, was the fire pit over here to the left?
Yes.
So where did you run?
I fell out of my chair and ran this way.
And you're pointing towards the street area?
Yes.
And I'll show you what's been admitted as 25. You mentioned something about an air conditioning unit. Is this it?
Yes.
And then I'll show you what we've marked as State's Exhibit 329 and ask you if this is the portion, is that the fence that you jumped over?
Yes.
Statement is 329 is evidence at this point?
Any objection? Admitted.
The permission of public?
Yes.
Walk us through this photograph and tell us how you ran and jumped.
I jumped over this air conditioning unit, landed about here, took several more leaps, jumped the fence here.
Okay. When you say jump the fence, are there, it looks like there's places you could put your feet and help you
Yes.
climb over it? Is that what you mean?
Yes.
While you were doing that, did you hear someone coming up behind you?
No.
Did you know if you were being shot at back over there by the fence?
I believed I was still being shot at.
And what makes you believe that?
I continued to hear shots.
Did you hear any of your friends screaming or yelling or making any noise whatsoever?
No.
And then I'll show you what's marked as state's number, submitted evidence number 2. Another aerial photo. 1105, is that your address?
Yes.
And then 1103, is that your neighbor?
Yes.
All right, so show us from state's exhibit number 2. You've already told us that you jumped the fence. And where did you go?
I laid it on the other side of the fence, about right here, and then ran through the bushes to my neighbor's porch about right here.
Where's the front door?
You can't see it, but it is about here.
And what did you do at your neighbor's door?
I opened it and I yelled for him to call the police. I told him someone was shooting in my backyard.
What's your emotional state right now?
Panic.
Have you been shot?
No.
Throughout this entire incident, were you ever shot?
No.
When you ran and jumped over that fence, were the gunmen still in your backyard?
Yes.
So was your neighbor's door open? You just walked in?
It was unlocked and I ripped the front door open.
And did you step inside his house?
I took one step inside. I told him that there was someone shooting in my yard, and I told him to call 911.
And what happened?
He ran to the door. He gently pushed me out, told me to hide, and he shut the door and locked it.
What did you do that?
After he locked his door, I ran to the next yard, and I stopped on the side of the house behind 2 trash cans, and I waited about 30 to 40 seconds.
Were you hiding?
Yes,
And why were you hiding?
I was afraid that they were still chasing me.
And what did you do after did you step out from behind the trash can?
Yes, I came out from behind the trash cans and went back to my neighbor's driveway, stopped behind his truck.
Were you hiding behind his truck?
Yes,
And from that truck, even though there's a big tree there, from behind this truck, do you have an eyesight back to your driveway of your house?
yes.
Tell us what you did from behind that truck.
I stayed behind the truck and I watched my house and I saw 2, maybe 3 figures come this way out of my yard.
When you say come this way, which way are you pointing?
I'm pointing, coming from my backyard under this awning to my driveway.
Through the carport?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead.
I saw them arguing. I couldn't quite understand what they were saying. It was dark. I believe there was 3 of them, and they all got into a car in my driveway and took off.
You said you keep saying you believe there were 3 of them. Are you positive there were 3 gunmen?
I'm not positive.
Could there have been 2 gunmen?
It is possible.
When you saw the people, the gunmen come out from under the carport, did you see any of them touching each other?
Yes, it looked like one was helping the other to get into the car.
And what does that mean? Describe for us what you saw.
I saw 2 of the figures very close together, struggling to walk.
And can you describe that for us? I know your hands are shackled, but describe, and if we need to, I'll ask the court to unshackle your hands just for that. But I'd like for you to show us physically how these 2 were helping each other.
It looked like one had his arm around the other's waist and was helping him to the car.
And can you stand up and show us that? All right, so if I'm one of the gunmen, your arm would be around me, kind of helping me? Did it appear that one of them could be injured?
Yes,
And whose car did
I did not know whose car it was at the time, but later I found out that it was Sean's car that they took out of my driveway.
So did you see them leave?
Yes.
When did you do that?
After the car left, it went this way down the street.
When you say this way, if I'm looking at your house, I'm standing there looking at your front door, are you saying the car left going right down the street?
Yes.
Go ahead.
After the car left, I ran back to my house and I stopped right here at my bedroom window and I tried to break the window to get in. I knew that I had a gun just inside that window. The window didn't break, it just fractured my hand. I then jumped back over the fence the way I came and I ran back through my yard and went into my house this way. I stopped for a second about right here. I saw Kelly sitting in her chair still lifeless. I didn't immediately see Sean or Brandy, so I screamed for both of their names. They didn't answer. I screamed one more time and then continued running and went back into my house.
And why did you run back into your house?
To grab a gun.
Why?
I was afraid there were still shooters in my yard or in my house.
So what did you do?
I ran back inside. I picked up 2 of my guns. One of them I couldn't get to chamber, so I set it back down. And then I picked up a shotgun, and it was loaded. And I went back outside. I came out this way. I looked around my yard this way, and then I walked over here and came under the carport. I didn't come all the way out into my driveway, but I saw that Sean's car was missing. And then I ran back inside. I put the gun down and then came back outside through my front door and ran to this neighbor's house. He was standing.
Neighbor's house now?
Yes. He was standing outside and I asked him for his cell phone to call 911. And he said he already was. And then a few seconds later, a police officer pulled down my street and I flagged him down.
Now, at this point, what's your emotional state?
I'm having a panic attack.
And what is that? How did that affect you?
My breathing was erratic. My heart was pumping very fast. I was having trouble speaking. I was still trying to understand what had just happened.
All right. When you went back there the second time, did you ever see Brandy and Sean?
No,
Did you ever hear anything? After that shooting started, did you ever hear any gasping or anything from Sean, Brandy, or Kelly?
no,
Did you ever see any movement from any of them?
no.
So you said you flagged a police officer down. Did you speak with him?
Yes.
And tell us a little bit about that.
I waved my arms at him. He drove past me, pulled down the next street, and did a 3-point turn and turned around and parked his car. And I ran up to him and I told him we needed an ambulance, that my friends were shot in my yard. And after that, he wouldn't let me go back to the house. He wouldn't go back in the house. He told me I had to sit there, and so I sat there, and everything kept replaying in my head, and I started to have a really serious panic attack, and I sat down on the ground and started crying.
Okay. Now, do you remember, you said the police officer did a 3-point turn. Did he pass you and then turn back around?
Yes, he drove past me and turned down the street that is directly in front of my house.
You remember that?
Yes.
Now, Mr. Vorpagel, at that time, surely you were aware of all the firearms you had in your house, right?
Yes.
As well as drugs, right?
Yes.
You had cocaine in there,
Yes.
ecstasy,
Yes.
marijuana.
Yes.
You clearly knew all that was illegal, right?
Yes, I did.
And it was illegal for you to have firearms, wasn't it?
Yes.
You'd been convicted of a felony prior to this, right? 2 felonies prior to this, correct?
Yes.
So those 2 felonies plus the 2 federal ones now, 4 times, right? 4-time
Yes.
convicted felon? All right. But that night, you knew you weren't supposed to have the firearms. Obviously, you weren't supposed to have the drugs, right?
Yes.
But did you yourself go to the police and tell them what happened in that house and tell them to go in there?
Yes.
And why is that?
I was worried about my friends' well-being. I didn't know if they were dying or dead yet. I thought that some of them could be saved.
As you were out there sitting on the ground, waiting for the rest of the police officers to come, did you begin to think about the trouble you were going to get into?
Yes, after talking to the officer and him not letting me go anywhere and him not going back there to help, I sat and replayed what had happened in my head, and I realized that I was going to go to prison.
And why is that?
I knew that I had a lot of guns and a lot of drugs in my house.
Okay. Knowing that you were going to go to prison, did you cooperate with the police anyway?
Yes.
After you flagged down that first officer, did you cooperate with him?
Yes.
Did other officers come to the scene?
Yes.
A lot of officers, right?
Yes.
Did you cooperate with everybody from law enforcement that asked you questions?
Yes.
And when I say cooperate, did you give them permission to go in your house?
Yes.
Did you ask them to go in your house?
Yes.
How long did you stay outside near your house that night before you were taken to the hospital?
An ambulance showed up within 5 minutes of that first officer and took me to the hospital.
Let me just take you back just a little bit. You said when you were hiding behind your neighbor's truck looking into your driveway, you said you realized then that they were taking Sean's car, right?
I didn't know it was Sean's car at the time.
All right, that's my mistake. Let me go a little further. Once you're already back inside your house after those people left in Sean's car, did you notice Sean's car was gone?
I knew there was a car missing from my driveway. I wasn't sure that it was Sean's at the time.
All right. At any time after the shooting started and you were running and you went to your neighbors' houses, did you ever see any strange cars in your driveway?
No.
So other than your truck, Brandy's car, and Sean's Honda, that entire evening, before, during, and after the shooting, did you ever see any other cars there?
No.
All right, so back now, the police came, or the first officer came, other officers began to come, and how long did you stay at that scene?
About 5 minutes.
And did an ambulance come?
Yes.
Did you get into the ambulance?
Yes.
And were you still having trouble breathing?
Yes.
Had you fallen down a few times that evening?
Yes. When I ran from my fire pit, I fell after jumping over the AC unit. I fell directly on my face, jumping over the fence, and I fell when I jumped through the bushes.